Hello and welcome to episode 4 of Blnker, the podcast, a podcast designed for small to medium-sized businesses, from owners, founders, right through to anyone that works in that environment and is exposed to the biggest part of any business, which is people. And today's topic, we're talking about filtering out the noise. So what does that mean? So noise comes from anything from the volume of applications that companies are finding at the moment through to interview processes and anything else that is stopping you focus on what you should be focused on, be that hiring or being a candidate, trying to find a job. And I'm delighted to be joined by someone that I've got to know fairly well over the last couple of years. And the reason I was keen for this person to join this podcast is because I know they've been through processes, both recruiting, but most importantly, being a candidate for a period of time, and so has got great exposure to both sides. So very warm welcome to Alan Derbyshire-Trice.
Thank you, Andrew. Yes.
Current CMO of Jugo.
Yes.
So thank you very much for coming on board and joining this episode. Kick off by telling us a bit about Jugo.
Well, Jugo, yeah. I mean, look, we're pitching ourselves as the next generation of virtual meetings. It's a very different space than I've been in. It's not going up against Zoom or Teams.
Wise.
That would be stupid. That would be absolutely madness. But we are that kind of lens over the top of Zoom at the moment, which elevates your virtual meeting experience. I think the interesting thing about the whole project that I've joined is that virtual meetings have become a norm, yet they're not evolving, and you literally get stalemate on them after 10-15 minutes. And what we're trying to do is pitch in there for those people who are going after those kind of high-end meetings, pitches, processes, town halls, where you want to engage. And that's what we're all about. It's about elevating the person who's hosting a meeting and enabling them to look good, feel good, and deliver their message with impact. You can tell I've reeled that off of a few decks, but yeah, we're launching a SaaS version of the product early next year. So we're still in that kind of build up to launch and product market fit, all those lovely jazzy startup terms that I didn't know about. So
it's a great, exciting space, and I've seen some of the bits around the technology, and it's really cool stuff. And it's brilliant. So it needed it, and the market, you say, is quite stale.
Well, it is, and the fact that Jugo has managed to attract with its managed service the likes of Coca-Cola and Guinness and Paris Saint-Germain, the football club, and all sorts of other major brands around the world from this little brand in Bristol shows there's a market out there for this. Yeah. We just need to find the bit, allow it to be used every day without the managed service. So no, it's very exciting.
Cool, brilliant. And just give us a bit of background about you and kind of from, kind of mid-career to where you are now, and that journey would be great.
Yeah, I mean, look, I had a fairly sort of checkered entry into marketing, but look, I was very fortunate to start my career off at Puma, and I was there for a number of years. I love the brand, I love the product. Yeah. It was all about the people, and everyone absolutely adored what we did, which was I stayed there for 6.5 years. I moved out to Germany for the brand. I then had to come back to the UK for personal reasons, and I then spent a few years in big fashion brands like Diesel and Coach. I then went to an SME, Lyle & Scott, in sort of 2015, and then went agency side for 3 years. And at that point, I had met my now wife, and we decided to escape to the country and move down to the southwest. And then I've been very fortunate enough to work for two of the biggest brands down here, one being Screwfix, which I was at over COVID, which was probably no better place to be, and the business went through the roof over that period. And then I've spent the last 3.5 years at Clark's. I was marketing director for UK and EMEA, so I went in at a really interesting time where they'd just been bought out, and an old colleague of mine, Tara, who used to work with at Puma, came in as a CMO, and no better time to come and join a brand that it was a bit of a niche I wanted to scratch. So, which brings me up to pretty much today. I got made redundant beginning of 2024, which leads us into the journey of why I'm here, I suppose.
Yeah, and then we met last year at some point.
We did meet last year,
quite early last year in the end. And it was through a process that we were managing for a client at the time, and Alan was very close to landing a role with a cool brand, but for a few reasons didn't work out in that instance. But that's how we met, and I think that's quite a good place to start a conversation, really, and thinking about your experience, not only for that process, but being someone who was made redundant and a very difficult market, was applying for roles, having lots of conversations, having lots of interviews, having lots of meetings, and now landing a great job. But there would have been lots of experiences that you had that are not unique, right? They're what people would be experiencing all the time, and I think a light doesn't get shown enough on that, as what does that mean from a candidate, because it's really important for companies to hear it, because they don't think about that side of things enough. No. And I'm sure there were processes where you went, I didn't get a job, but okay, I'm comfortable with how the process panned out. I'm disappointed, of course, but you walked away and went, actually, it was as good as it could have been. And there's other ones when you're going, it was just crap. Like, from end to end, it was just a really poor experience. So just keen for you to kind of share a little about that, what that was like.
I mean, look, I got the T-shirt last year, and that's how I would say, like, I popped into the market at the time when I don't think anyone quite understood, who was not in it, how difficult it was. And I've said to you before, it was the most humbling of years for someone like myself. People just saying to me, "Oh, you'll be fine. Yeah, you've got a great CV. Yeah. You've worked all these great brands." And does it means it means something? It might allow you to get in the door, but yeah, I mean, I had processes that were 7 rounds over 2.5 months, 2-hour psychoanalysis tests, you name it. I was ghosted. I had periods where I wasn't being called back, and it's the bit for me last year was humility of the process. There, it really felt like everyone who was recruiting had forgotten that there were people on the other side. And for someone like myself, I've hired tens of people, like I've had 20, 30, 40 people in my career. Sure. And I always try and I'm always trying to be authentic myself, but you do forget that there's someone at the end of it. So I went into processes where, and because I was off work, a week felt like a year. Yeah. 2 weeks of not hearing anything was like, it was excruciating. And all the while you're trying to build yourself up for each process, but it's killing you, like literally not hearing anything. You then just get someone just call you out of nowhere going, I know we're stopping that role now. You've done 3 rounds and you presented and you travelled. And then I had a company just go, yep, they phoned me up and went, yeah, that's it. And that happened 3 or 4 times. Yeah.
And like you said, when you're not working, you're hyper-focused on obviously trying to get a job. But it's like, when you're buying a house and you're waiting to find if your offer's been accepted, that time just feels endless. So you're just compounding that over and over again, aren't you?
You are, and it's like buses last year. There was moments where there were a few roles coming out and you were getting into a few processes, and I was one of the lucky ones that I was getting into interview processes. And I know a lot of people that weren't, and literally sitting in silence.
Yeah, sure.
But then you get these kind of big voids of like nothing. And you get the whole, well, it's coming up to Easter. It's coming up to summer. We're now approaching Christmas. And you're like, I haven't worked for and also for everyone that's sitting there who's got a family, actually anyone, but watching an amount of money decrease it's like being squeezed up against the wall. You can see the wall. You know when you've got to. Yeah. And when I got made redundant, I had the attitude of, right, I'm going to take a few months to recalibrate. Yeah. I've got the kids. We'll have a sort of think about it. I'll be in the job by May. Yeah. July. Yeah. September. Yeah. And that's what it really does. It makes you have to, I suppose you have this ideal of what job you want, and actually you're just having to you end up having to spread yourself so thin because you're desperate for work. So it's instead of cherry picking the roles that you think are right for you, you end up applying for stuff that you go, I've really got no right to be throwing my CV and then into the hat. But it was the most humbling year of my life. And I think the bit for me is that what I remember, there were some amazing people who kept that human element, and they're amazing. Recruiters such as yourself and your team as well. And I said that to you at the time, but people who kept you updated, even if there was nothing to update you on, a phone call to say, we still remember you, was the biggest thing I took out of last year.
Yeah.
Like it was the everything. Otherwise, not hearing anything is like brutal.
No, and it's really hard, and it's great to hear that, and you know, and it's something that you're always trying to do better at. I think, especially from our side, do we get it right every time? Absolutely not. I'm sure there's people that might tune in and go, well, they didn't let us know of something back, and of course that's going to happen, right?
Yeah,
and you're never going to get it right all the time, but you have to take these experiences both as a candidate and as a company and go, what didn't work? What was I maybe let down on? How did that make me feel? And what am I going to do personally differently to make sure that doesn't happen every time moving forwards? It's not about being perfect, because the market is still really tough for candidates. There's still a lot of people out there. That's why, you know, the title of this one is filtering out the noise, and it feeds into something you touched on there. Is you go through that journey of being a candidate who's in control to being a candidate who I shy away from the word desperate, not about you, but being in that situation where like you see that timeline.
You can say desperate. You can.
Yeah,
I'd say it is desperation.
But you act differently, and then you fall into the, you know, that cycle. There is a lot of people in there who are applying for anything because needs must, right? You know, at the end of the day, there's a basic need to put enough food on the table, but from a company perspective, where, you know, you're in a what can be seen as a blessed space where you've got, I know I can put a job out tomorrow and I'm going to get 100 applications. Great. But how do you find the ones that really want the job and that you want? Because unfortunately, when you flip us on the head and you have to make put a commercial hat on as a business, you still want to hire the person you want to hire, not take someone on because they are the neediest person. That's a really cutthroat thing to say. Yep. But that's the reality. So there's a disconnect between the two sides. And, you know, I what I'm keen to explore with you is, having been both sides of events, and I know you've been you know, going through recruitment processes from your current role now, what your thoughts are on how both businesses and candidates can bridge that gap when there is a bit of a disconnect. You know, what is it from an emotional perspective that can be different from being a candidate? Or is the whole expectation on the business to act differently? What would you say within that?
Well, I think what you said about the amount of people out there and the amount of people applying, it becomes almost like, and LinkedIn's helped this by literally you can apply while sitting on a train and you can do it within seconds, right? I think it's so important. I've used gut feel a lot, and I think you need to understand that a CV is not just going to be kind of this linear, perfect thing. And that's the bit I think everyone expects you to go. You've got to show a nice line of progression. A CV is a roadmap to someone's life, right? And things happen in lives and change your direction. And I think from my point of view is I want a CV. I want to see candidates who are real. I want to hear what they've done. I don't shy away from someone going, do you know what, I lost my job. You feel scared. I was in that thing. I felt scared to show that I'd done a contract role once when I moved back from Germany. I felt like I couldn't say that I'd done a contract role because it makes me less of a person. What I love about the CVs that I pick up immediately, that I don't even have to look at, and it's not to do with design. It's just this almost like a CV is this real kind of it shows a real person behind it, and I think a lot of what I'm looking for now is outcomes. What a lot of businesses you could feel like you can just put your CV down with your brands that you've been at, all these kind of statements of fact. But actually, you want real outcomes. What have you actually done? Just because you've been there doesn't mean to say you've done anything, right? And I say that in the light of, I feel this is the bit, and I think so there's a real healthy, from my point of view, I think it's really important that businesses look at, there's got to be some structure in the process, but you've got to use gut feel with some proof points in there. And I think cutting away that need to go, every candidate's got to be perfect. Some of the best people out there don't have the most conventional routes into what they've done. Their journey, some people look at people who've gone travelling and go, well, they obviously clearly don't know what they're doing. Actually, what they're doing is going and finding themselves and actually getting to a point where they know who they are and what they want to do. So for me, it's, and especially going to a startup, you need to use gut feel a lot more now and go, do you know what? I don't have the time to go through a 5-round presentation. I want real world kind of, what can you do to help me right now? And that's what you should look at with the personality. It fits the culture. Yeah. Because some people forget about it and they start wear testing you as a cultural fit later down the line. You need to do that all at the beginning.
Yeah.
There's no point.
I think it's really important. I think the bigger piece around that's probably a whole other topic is how do you do that? Because you know, and there's no right or wrong answer with that. And I had another conversation with someone else around, do we do video interview first and then face to face or whatever it is. It will touch a bit more about your experience, about what you think works, especially being a candidate. But I think that transparency, that honesty, that ability to represent your true self, I think, you do as well, more people should if they aren't, is hold that with a real value and a strength of that person. Because, you're a great example of this. You were made redundant. That's not a reflection on you. That's not a reflection on your ability to do a job and your experience and expertise. It's a circumstance of, it could be where the business is or where the big market challenges, other things that are totally outside of individuals' control. So there's no personal reflection on that. It's hard when you're living that to not think personally, what have I done wrong? Could I do this differently? Have I made the wrong decisions? Because of life moves forward. So I think businesses need to look at that and go, like you said, if someone's not in work for 6 months, or they went traveling, or they had to do something completely left field, it's not, it doesn't define that person.
Humility, I use that word and I'm all about that. And there's a piece around kind of vulnerable leadership. And I take that into being a vulnerable candidate. And that is a superpower within your journey. It can be as good as someone who looks like they've got the perfect CV. Yeah. And like you said, like I went into the market, you're looking at all these people who seem to be like, have it sorted. How are they not? How have they not been made redundant? Actually, someone could have sat in a job for 10 years and have missed out on those key life learnings that you get. And I think my bit is, don't shy away. Yes, you've got to structure it in the right way, but it's a good thing to talk into. I felt absolute shame having been the first time I've been made redundant. But when you speak to, I had some coaching beginning of last year from a guy, Mark, who's a very kind of well-lauded marketeer. And you look at his CV and you go, but he was like, I got made redundant 4 times. Yeah. And when you hear it from someone, you go, God, nothing like that ever happened to you. And when you hear it's okay. Yeah. And you've still progressed. Yeah. And businesses still should be able to look at you because I'm seeing so many people on LinkedIn who are going, I've been out for 12 months. Is this detriment to me, a business hiring me? I would say absolutely not. It's how you're talking into it and not just sitting there being a victim, but actually you're going, I'm doing something. I'm being positive. And that's the same way I'd go about, I suppose, reviewing candidates on the other side of the fence. I don't shy away from people who there's gaps, or that's what's happened before in big businesses. Oh, they've got a 2-year gap when they might become a mother. Or, and that's a whole other topic, right? We could go down a whole other lane on that. Absolutely. But that's again, there's so many of these. So
and it's and I think COVID's taught us a lot around that, where there was a massive peak in hiring, and only a few years ago it was like trying to find any decent candidates was tough. Yeah, I was in there hiring for business. We went from COVID, it was 35 of us up to just over 300 in 18 months. Similar to your time at Screwfix, as a business just boomed. Trying to find great people was really hard, and then suddenly everything's kind of recalibrated, and that's what we're experiencing now. And so that shame thing you talk about, that shame feeling, is that's natural. I don't think that's going to change, because you're always still going to have that, that concern and that kind of what if feeling. Yeah. But you're right, when you hear those people that go, perception, they're brilliant, but if they've been made redundant 4 times, you can't hold all of that internally. It's just trying to manufacture the right way forwards.
Absolutely. I just think it's the tables have to turn now, because it was almost like people could, when they were hiring, they could forget about the person, and it's got to go back to the way it used. Well, I say used to be. I don't even know
the good
what
old
it used.
days.
The good old days. I don't know, but yeah, it is that shame factor, and I think we've got to be able to talk into these things more positively. And people are having life-changing moments that are affecting their career, and that should be something you go, why can't I not talk about that? Why is that such a bad thing? Everyone, just because you're in a senior position, that's another thing. Just because you're in a senior position doesn't mean to say you've had the perfect journey.
No.
So
not at all.
You need to, as a senior person, when you're hiring, on the flip side, look at that and go, that doesn't mean they're any less of a candidate.
Totally true. I had my eyes open to this a couple of years ago. I was in a business and real classic startup, early stage, hustling, starting to make some progress. And I was in there as talent lead, and the owner said, I'm really excited by failed founders. I'd never heard that phrase before, and I was like, we kind of dived into a little bit, and I explored a little bit. And it's like, these people have tried something. They've tried something. They've got some investment. They've had an idea. They've put it to market, but for whatever reason, it hasn't worked. It's not necessarily them that's had the issue. It might just be timing. It might be they run out of cash. Absolutely. It might be product fit at that moment in time. But they've gone out their way to go, I've stepped out of my corporate cushy career, and I've had a go at something, and I've run it, and for whatever reason not worked out. They're the people that are going to make stuff happen.
They're going to roll their sleeves up. Yeah. And when they come into your business, they are going to, you know what I mean? I'm going to get their head down and do that. And that's something again, I was lucky enough. I was starting my career as a policeman for 4 years, and someone took a chance on me because they saw that as a very different quality. Coming straight into Puma, but it just shows you that people who've failed, whatever failed means, they just have a different that ability to stand back up again, and they'll do that for you in your business. And I think that's something quite interesting.
And they're willing to push their boundaries, or they're trying different things and not just sort of turn up tick boxes all day, which is great.
Exactly.
So taking that experience that you've had and those going through lots of different processes, having different interviews and psychometric assessments and all the kind of the whole gambit of what someone could throw at you to assess, is this person right for us? What really ground your gears? What did you look and go, what's that about? I'm really interested.
What ground my gears? Do you know what? I think it comes down to that point of what are you getting from this process?
When you mean you, the business?
Well, yeah, the business. What are you getting from this that's enabling you to filter someone? I get a presentation, I get that, but you're meeting pretty much everyone in the business across multiple levels and things. Doing psychometric testing, I get, but some of them felt like I was having my IQ literally. And some of us don't respond. Put some math stuff in front of me at the best of times is not a good thing. When you're under a timed 30 seconds, that ground my gears. That was one of those ones where I don't know what I'm doing marketing. I'm not coming in to kind of solve third world debt sort of thing. That's not what I'm doing. And it was almost this thing we're going, what values do you want from your candidates to get you to the point? And I think it's a lot of those things where I got actually asked something from in the Southwest from one of the processes, and it was like, so I take it, Alan, this is a job for convenience because it happened to be half an hour down the road from where I live. There's two ends of the spectrum here. It's that almost that kind of, just because I want to live and work in a certain location means that I'm why are you here? You're just obviously doing this just so you can. Those are the comments that can kill you in that period. And I've got many, how many gears have I got to grind? I think there's loads across the processes. But that's part of the journey of last year, a very different journey for me in terms of the multiple processes, seeing good and, should we say, not so good.
And I think I do sympathise with businesses, especially when you're in a candidate-rich market, because you can have your cake and eat it, and you can become comfortable with that, and there's a risk of that. But I think it's really important for businesses to remember that you want that person who joins your business to know who you are, know what you're about as a company, and be really excited about that. rather than just go, do you know, we can really push the boundaries of what is acceptable.
Well, yeah,
because we can, and because we feel we need to be super critical because we've got so much choice.
And that's the bit. I felt like it felt like there was this autonomy that you could push people to the absolute max.
Yeah.
And again, that's something that I think from the processes I've been in, it didn't feel like it was done for a purpose. So many interviews I was doing, they're looking for candidates paying good salaries who've got 18, 20 years of experience. Not once in certain processes did I get asked about me and my passions and my drivers and me as a person. I went into one, it was like going into an interview with the Riddler, but it was all stuff role related, not who are you and why us? What's the passion about joining this company?
Yeah.
And it doesn't make sense because you go, well, I've got all this on my CV, yet you're not even asking me about me and my drivers and what interests me about your company.
Yeah. And good candidates would have done that research, and you know, they will ask really interesting questions because they care. Yeah. But you have to give them that opportunity. And I think a lot of time businesses are blinded by a process that is so rigid and structured. It's a filtration system rather than an acquisition of someone that you want to work in your company and who you feel is going to be not just the best fit on a box ticking exercise about have they done this X, Y, and Z? Can they do that? Can they, can they be this? It's like, are they actually going to be right for our people? You know, are they being a person that's not just going to enjoy working here, but challenge it and push it forwards?
And that's it. And that's the bit. Do you want to stay stagnant and doing exactly what you did previously, or do you want to take a bit of a risk? Because that's the bit here. A lot of people are covering themselves by finding candidates that have, on paper, that they can announce and it looks good. But actually, do you want to be brave and bring in someone that, because there's a lot of that at the moment where if you haven't been in FMCG, you can't go FMCG. If you hadn't been like B2B, you can't go to B2B. If you haven't got healthcare experience, you can't go health. If you're a marketeer, but I think the best marketeers are the ones that if they just understand, they can understand their product, understand their consumer, and you can add something new, a new lens. That's what. So being brave in the process is well, and I've learned that again from the person that hired me way back when, is that you can be brave, take a bit of a risk, probably get questions, but it can be worth looking outside the box a little bit, because I think everyone felt like they had so much opportunity just to go for the norm, the status quo this year or last year.
I think there's that risk element, and again, I always try and play devil's advocate because I've been a candidate. I was out of work for 3 months, having stepped away from a role, a few years ago, and felt that pressure, and the psychometric testing thing. I was doing one. I literally just stopped doing it. I emailed the guy and said, I'm not applying for this job because I just think this test is ridiculous. And it's like, I failed it because I was like, but I didn't care that I failed it. It had no relevance to the job I was applying for at the time. And so you just feel that it's so one-sided. You have to remember that there are people on the other side of the fence.
Yeah.
And those people will be your future employees and colleagues. And you can take some mitigated risk. And I say that around the kind of context of currently at the moment in 2025, as in 2024, it's still a bloody tough market.
Absolutely.
Right. And it's a real hard one, not just for candidates getting jobs, but businesses trying to make money and survive.
Yeah.
And so that word risk is probably a bit further down the pecking order.
Yeah.
But you really need to understand, what is risk when you're hiring someone? Do you want someone who's worked in your competitor or in your industry who, on paper is the perfect candidate, but maybe you don't understand about the person? What's their why?
Yeah.
What's their care? For me, that's a risk, bringing that person in. You might get some, directors at the top of the chain who go, yeah, I get that, brilliant, great. But actually, compare them with someone that maybe is 50% along that ticking list. But when you meet them, you go, that person's going to get shit done. They care. They want it. They know who we are. They love it. Where's the risk there?
And that's that gut feel element, though. I feel that people are you going on the kind of I don't know, you're losing that subjective element. You're just literally going, do you know what? It looks good on paper. It'll look good in my business.
Yeah.
Everyone will go, that's a nice, smooth process of bringing someone in. They'll slot right in because they've done it before. But is that what's... I suppose that's what we're sort of having to challenge at the moment, is bringing in people. And I get it. It's time. It's money. The risk of bringing someone in, especially where I'm at right now, is if you don't get the right person in now as we bring a product to market, it could cause big financial risk. But what else do we go on other than humility and gut feel and getting to know that person? Go, do you know what, I think, what else other than a psychometric test that might tell you that I wasn't very good at maths is not going to tell you that I might not be able to deliver growth for your business. So
I agree, and I think there's absolutely a place for testing, and it's a really critical part of the journey of hiring specific roles, the right roles.
Absolutely.
But I was involved in processes recently where it was used, but it was used on the basis that the current team had already been through the process, and so they've mapped out who they were as a business, and so they had something to go, this is who we are. So we have an understanding of the type of people they're going to enjoy it. When it's just used to assess someone, it's like, what's the context?
Yeah.
And why is it? And that's when we go back to kind of frustrations of candidates. Like, what's the point?
Transparency would be the bit there then. Yeah. So you understand, instead of it just you're doing this test, explain to them, to your point, there's nothing wrong with transparency in the process. Having gone through many processes, if you tell me what's going to be involved and why, and the why is really important. Yeah. Why am I sitting here doing an hour? Because we've done, we're mapping out what we've got. Yeah. We are looking for this type of, I have to say a specific type of person, but you can say that's why we're doing it. Yeah, we're not trying to check your IQ because we're looking for someone with a Mensa kind of 130 plus. We're actually looking to make sure, just for someone to say that to people so they feel like they know what they're doing and why. And the why is super important, especially people who have been out of work, who have gone through maybe 10 interviews and going, do you know, what am I doing? Like literally... Just that small, like I said to you earlier, a phone call to say, we haven't heard anything, but we're still thinking of you, is really important. Transparency in a process is equally. So I know where I am at. Yeah. You'll hear this by this. If you don't, then that's just that. Cool, but,
it's really important. And it's remembering that it's a two-way conversation. Absolutely. You want someone to work for you because they know who you are, what you're about, where you're going, and you've shared that information with them. It's not a one-way street. You've got to be open and transparent, but doing it at the right time so that it's delivered. So someone coming into the final stage of interviews is fully geared up and excited about working with you because they know everything. So you can go into interview and really critique that person and dive under the skin and the hood of who they are, rather than going into those final interviews still telling them what you're about, which is some of the risk.
Exactly.
Which can easily happen.
It can.
Question for you would be, given your experience, throughout your career, not just in last year when you were doing lots of interviewing, but you've interviewed for lots of roles throughout your time and you've interviewed people to come and work in your team. But coming out of that last year where it kind of was hyper-focused as a candidate, what have you potentially changed in terms of your own interview processes for bringing people into your team, or what are you more consider of now you've had that and you're trying to take that forwards?
I think that term transparency, so people know what the journey is very early on, and I immediately want just to get. I have a very kind of, I suppose, first stage interview for me is really just getting to know them. And that's what I've taken out of it, because I've gone into interviews where it's smack bang straight into question time. Yeah. And what I really want to, I think the best you get out of your teams and anyone is when you make them feel comfortable. So I go about my process, and interview process now is like, look, this is going to be an informal. I want you to understand, be yourself. I want to just understand you, your drivers, where you've been, what's your journey. I like to get to know that. And that's different for everyone. Depends where you're, but for me, it's super important because I love to know the why. How have you got here? What's brought you to this? And I've unearthed some great elements of information from people of what brought them to this point that you go, that's a really interesting decision you've made about what you want. I took some time out and I decided that this, and it played nicely into what we were looking for. And I also make sure that I think I'm hypersensitive to going back to people personally or making sure they've had feedback straight away.
Which is hard. It's a hard thing to do.
Really hard. And again, as a part of a startup or an SME business, we don't have 1,000,001 recruiters, and there is a lot of applicants out there. But you've got to go, unless you say to them, look, if you don't hear back in 2 weeks, you're not going to get anything. But I do think if someone's taken the time, they have half an hour, 45 minutes with you, they deserve something. Even if it's like, great, look, we've got more people to see, we'll back with you next week. Yeah. I would not allow myself to leave someone hanging, knowing what it was doing to me. Yeah. And I think, again, that bit where you go, look at you, you'll see you're 18 years, doesn't matter. I was still getting the biggest companies in the world leaving you hanging for 2 weeks with nothing. No. And you'd be promised, do you know what? Promised, you will hear on X, that date passes by. A recruitment process is more marketing now than it ever has been, because everyone forgot that. I don't know if you must have seen it, but there was so many people going, do you know, I look at these brands that I've shopped with differently now I've interviewed with them. Yeah. And it doesn't matter what size you are, you've got that perception of your business is super important, and 100%. Your process. And the best companies that I saw last year, and the best recruiters, were people that were open, honest, told you how it was, you knew where you were. It's basic, like, again, humility of working with people, right? And that's what everyone forgot. Yeah. And that was the biggest. So I've taken that, to go back to your point, I had 12 months almost of, sitting in that space with 2 offers pulled, multiple stages. It had to change me in the way I recruit now. I've always classed myself as that person who I've got a good sense of kind of, I want to make sure people understand and feel comfortable in a process. Yeah. But going back to people and making sure they might have had 2 interviews that day or 3 that week or nothing, they deserve to hear something. They've given up time to do a process. Yeah. It's not hard to give them feedback. And I think if you're an SME, if you're replying to everyone, it's difficult, but if you are replying, even just say, look, great, thanks, not whatever, you're 80% ahead of everyone else out there. That's a positive in a journey, right?
Yeah, 100%. So I think I always cover that with candidate resilience and being realistic in your expectations. So what I mean by that is, and you've touched already, the way LinkedIn works, indeed, you can apply for hundreds of jobs instantly, that kind of Tinder swiping, right? Yeah. You can't then expect to hear back from every application you make. I think that's unrealistic. As soon as you invest some time,
correct,
that's the critical point. If someone's invested some time in you, or you've gone out of way to go, I want to speak to you to find out about you, I think there's an obligation to that point offer that person the guarantee that they will hear back. Yeah. And then if you can't go, you would know by this date, at least being able to touch in. Or if you don't have a decision by that date, let them know. We don't know anything yet, but we'll be in touch. That's that critical point.
That is exactly. And again, we're getting, like I said right at the beginning, you end up applying for stuff that you really don't have the right to be applying for because the desperation,
of course,
and you don't expect on those. But like you said, if you've had a foot put in the door and you've spoken to someone, you deserve something. There's a and that is that narrative I'm seeing from so many people on LinkedIn and speaking to people. I spent a lot of time speaking to people. Is getting us back to that kind of remembering who's at the end of this, and this is the most important thing. And
and I think to kind of wrap that up, we're seeing the advent of AI across everything, right? And there's lots of tools in there in the recruitment system world that really use AI to do all of that screening, sorting, sifting. I see some value in it, but we still need to remember these are humans finding jobs. We're not trying to buy a car or a table or, book a restaurant, something that is a lot less impactful on you as a person you're being. So keeping the human embedded in the process is so important.
Yep.
Because as soon as you pass everything over technology, then how can you be accountable for your employer brand, making sure that people at the other end feel valued in the process?
I think, look, given obviously we're speaking with you today and your business structure of how you do things, but there is, again, from my point of view, I've hired within big multi-billion pound companies with loads of structure and process and interview like where they're working, and then I've been now at a startup where it's gut feel. Yeah, it's going on gut feel and like instinct.
Yeah,
and then I've been a candidate for 12 months where humility.
Yeah,
and there is a sweet spot. Doesn't matter if you're in the biggest multi-billion-pound company or you're a startup, there is structure. AI can do those, like you said, the filtering process, but there's got to be that human element right the way through, because like you said, you're hiring people. It's not like you're not just hiring a robot to do something.
No, not yet anyway.
No, not yet. And that's what we want to get away with. But I think there's a sweet spot of reminding all ourselves, doesn't matter if you've got 50 recruiters in your business or you're a one-man band of recruitment, the human element is still vital. And yes, we can speed things up, and you've got to have a process, and you can use automation. Yeah. But there has to be, it's got to be a blended process.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's a very interesting time, especially with the AI thing. That's another avenue we could. Yeah, another episode. One. We'll put on AI. Yes.
But listen, Alan, thank you very, very much. The transparency and honesty is quite unique. I don't think everyone does it, but we shouldn't be, like you said, ashamed to share that, because it's just real world experiences, and then it's how you take that forward and how you've done that with going into Jugo and your own hiring from here on. So thank you very much for joining us. If anyone wants to find a bit more about Jugo, how can they do that?
Well, we've got our website at jugo.io, and we're launching. I think we're launching, January. We're going to market then, but we're right in the midst of
exciting
this
times.
Product market fit, which is again a whole new world for someone who's come from big corporates to doing a startup. But hopefully by January we'll be out of that stage and launching the product, which is exciting. So
good luck with the launch.
Thank you
again for joining us. Jugo.io if you want to find out more about Jugo, or if you want to find out more about Blnker, blnker.com, or if you just want to have a conversation around how you can improve your own recruitment processes, make sure the human is at the center of what you're doing, send me a message on LinkedIn, Andrew Finn, and I'd love to have a chat. And if I don't hear from you, then I'll see you on the next episode. Thank you very much.